Hey, what's going on everyone? Tim here, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining in on this tutorial, and thank you to everyone who's been subscribing and commenting and interacting with all the tutorials recently. It's been really cool to see this community grow, and I'm excited for what has happened and for what's to come with these. My favorite thing to do is to create these tutorials to help you, to help myself, make more assets that we can keep in our arsenal, keep in our bank for our projects and for the things we're creating. So I hope these are helpful to you. And today I have another fun one. This is kind of a grainy sunburst look, and I'm really excited about this one because it can be applied to many different designs. So we're going to create the sunburst a little differently than just like kind of your normal process you've probably seen before to get this look. So let's go ahead and jump in. We of course are in After Effects with our default layout, and we're only using stock plugins as usual. So let's go ahead and create a new composition here. So I'm going to go New Composition, and let's name this Base. We'll keep it at 1920 by 1080, 30 frames per second, and 15 seconds in duration. And that's kind of what we're going to use for all our composition settings here. So let's go ahead and click OK. And the first thing we'll do is come down to our timeline, right click, New, Shape Layer. And so we have our empty shape layer here. I'm going to twirl this down, go to Add, and we're going to start off with a polystar path. So this is just kind of a basic star right here, but we're going to tweak this to make it into what we'll be using as our sunburst. So let's twirl down our polystar path. We're going to keep it at star. You have another option for polygon here, and you can play with that later, but we're going to keep it at star right now. On our points, let's go to 10, and we'll keep our position and rotation at 0. And so we need to size this up. So on our inner radius, I'm going to bump this to 125. On our outer radius, let's go to 250. And then on our inner roundness, let's go ahead to 700%. We're going to take that all the way up. So we've kind of inverted the points here, and we have this almost kind of flower looking shape, or, you know, kind of like a sun as it looks like. So that's perfect. That's all we need to do. Obviously, there's nothing there if I click off because we don't have our stroke yet. So let's go ahead and add that. I'm going to twirl up my polystar path and then go to Add, Stroke. And we're just going to do a couple things here. So we'll keep the color at white. The stroke width, let's take that to 5, just to kind of thicken that up a bit. And then we're going to come down to this last option here with Wave. I'm going to twirl that down. And so we have these properties here that we can play with. Honestly, just this amount property is what will change. We can leave the rest of this the same. But on the amount, let's go to 50%. And if I zoom in here, you can kind of see how we're tapering the stroke a little. I'm going to Command Z just so you can see that difference. So especially right here, you can see how that stroke's just getting a little tapered. And that's just going to help with some variation within the sunburst. So that's really all we need to do. Let's twirl up Wave, and then we'll twirl up Stroke. And now we can go ahead and build our loop. So let's go to Add and go to Repeater. And so it gives us our Repeater 1 option. And this is what we're going to animate and kind of make this thing with scale and rotation to get us our base loop. So a twirl down repeater. And on our copies, I'm going to change that from 3 to 30. And then we're going to animate this offset right here to make this thing move. Obviously, it's not going to look like this, but we'll change that down here in the transform options. But let's go ahead and keyframe the offset real quick. So with my playhead at 0 frames, 0 seconds, I'm going to change this from 0 to -13. And then I'm going to go ahead and click that stopwatch right next to offset, and that's going to activate our keyframe. So what we've done is put a keyframe at -13 right at the beginning here. And I'm going to go ahead and take my playhead all the way to the end. That's 15 seconds, and to my last frame. And let's just change that to -19. And so what's happening here is we have a nice slow moving loop. That looks great. So let's go ahead and make this a loop that's pushing at us and not this kind of scrolling by on the screen. So I'm going to twirl down Transform Repeater 1. And the first thing I'm going to do is change its position from 100 to 0 so we can center everything back up. On the scale, let's change that from 100 to 55%. And so now we have our loop pushing at us, kind of making that tunnel effect. And that looks great. Now we're just going to add a little more variation to the movement. So on this rotation, all we need to do is change that from 0 to 35 degrees. You can see now this thing's given a nice little twist counterclockwise. That's exactly what we want. Nothing too crazy, but just enough to give it some more visual interest. That looks great. I'm going to take my playhead back to the beginning. And right now our base layer is done. So let's twirl up Repeater 1 and twirl up our shape layer. And so this is all we need to do in our base composition. So let's go ahead and create our next comp, which is going to be our FX composition. And this is where we'll make this thing all pretty and grainy and make that style that we're looking for here. So I'm going to come up to my project panel and I have this new composition icon. I'm going to go ahead and click that new comp icon. And let's change this composition name to FX. And then all our settings should be the same, but I'll run through them real quick. 1920, 1080, 30 frames per second, 15 seconds long. I hit OK. And back up in my project panel, I have my base layer. I'm going to come up and click and hold and drag that down into my FX composition. And so we have our base layer loop here. That looks good. Right off the bat, let's go ahead and create 4 adjustment layers. And this is going to house all our effects as we move through this tutorial. So right click in our timeline area, new adjustment layer. Right click new adjustment layer. We'll do 2 more times. And then we'll go ahead and label these out. So we have 4 adjustment layers here. I'm going to come down to my first adjustment layer, hit return, and I'm going to name this one distort. Come to my next adjustment layer, hit return. I'm going to name this one glow. We'll go to our next one, and we'll name this one grain. And then our last one, we'll name PT. And so this is how it should be stacked in this order. Make sure it's like this, because if we have them the other way or kind of mixed up, it's going to reflect differently on this base layer. So we want it stacked like this. And so the first thing I'm going to do is come over to my effects and presets, and I'm going to type in CC radial. And so that should bring up CC radial fast blur, and that's the one we're going to use, not radial blur, but fast blur. And so with my distort adjustment layer selected, I'm going to double click CC radial fast blur. And nothing we really need to do here other than change the amount. So it's defaults at 50. I'm going to change that to 100, and we'll keep it at standard, but you can already see we kind of have that sunburst effect. Simple as that, kind of good look. You can see the variations from how we created the sunburst in there, and that's going to help as we go through with the other effects, giving some more detail within this design. So it's really all we need to do on the CC radial fast blur. Come back over my effects and presets, and still with my distort adjustment layer selected, I'm going to type in fill and double click on fill. We're just going to add some color to this. So default's at red, but I'm going to change it to a nice blue. So I'm going to click on that color box there, and I'll give you the hex code that I used, but you can use any color within here, but you're just going to get different results than what you're going to get through this tutorial. So what I used was 0009FF, which is a nice royal blue there. I'm going to hit OK. And that's all we need to do on the fill. And so we'll keep this distort layer selected and add one more effect on here, and that's going to be our turbulent displace. And that should bring up turbulent displace under the distort. Let's double click that, and that'll lay right on top of that fill. So let's just change a couple options in here, give it some nice distortion and some more movement for some added effect to this starburst. So the displacement, I'm going to change that from turbulent to twist. On the amount, let's drop that to 10. On the size, let's drop that to 50. The complexity can stay at 1, but we're going to animate this evolution here just a little bit, like I said, for some added movement. So with my playhead right at the beginning, 0 frames, 0 seconds, I'm going to click that stopwatch next to evolution. We'll keep it at 0 revolutions here. Let's take my playhead all the way to the end for that last frame and change it from 0 revolutions to 10 revolutions. So we're going 360 degrees 10 times. And then all we have to do to finish out turbulent displace here is twirl down this evolution options, and let's click cycle evolution here. And so all that's going to do is make sure the first frame and the last frame are the same, so we get a perfect loop on this. So looks good, no jumps or anything yet. We're obviously going to brighten this up in the next step here. It's pretty dark, but this is just going to be kind of the base movement and what the rest of these effects pull from. So we're good on the distort layer, and next we can move on to the glow to give this thing the light and everything that we need. So I'm going to come down to my timeline, click that glow adjustment layer, come over to my effects and presets. We're going to add some light rays to this just to kind of give it some brightness. So I'm going to type in CC light rays. You should get that pulled up under generate. I'm going to double click on that, making sure my glow layer is selected. And on the intensity, let's boost that all the way to 500. On the center, I'm going to go 960 by 540, so we get that right in the middle there. On the radius, I'm going to change that to 145. And you can see we're getting a nice light in the middle there with a really nice gradual fade coming off the edges. And on the warp softness, let's drop that to 0. You can see now we're kind of solidifying that sunburst. We'll keep the shape at round. I'm going to uncheck color from source, and I'm going to change this color from white to an orange so we get a really good mix in here. So let's click that color box there. And like I said, we're going to do an orange here. I'll give you the hex code real quick, but you can kind of find a color you want to. But the orange that I used is FF7726. That looks great. Let's hit OK. And now you can see we kind of have the sunset looking kind of sunburst here, which looks really nice. So transfer mode will keep the same there. And so that's all we need to do on the light rays. Let's come over to our effects and presets again and type in glow. We'll just pull up our basic glow plugin there. And so let's kind of give the light some good blooms here. So on the glow threshold, I'm going to change that from 60% to 55. On the glow radius, I'm going to boost that all the way up to 400. And then on the glow intensity, we'll leave that at 1. Everything else can stay at their defaults. Really all we wanted to do, like I said, is kind of give this a nice bloom on this glow to where that light's kind of radiating off that center point and going throughout. It also gives us that nice gradient going from the orange to the blue, giving us those pinks and purples in between, really making this thing look super tasty. So that's all we need to do on the glow. Just a couple more effects after this, and we're going to finish this out. So let me play through real quick and you can kind of see what's happening. So you can see the movement going on within here. That's from the turbulent displace, and then the pushing in from the loop that we created in the base layer. Love how this is looking. Perfect loop, no jumps, no skips. So like I said, let's go ahead and finish this out with a couple more effects. I'm going to click on that grain adjustment layer down in my timeline. Come over to my effects and presets. I'm going to use noise, HLS, auto. And so that'll pop up under the noise and grain category here. And make sure you're using auto because this is going to make the grain move on its own without any animation. And I love this plugin for my noise just because there's so much you can control within it. And it's just really easy to kind of slap on and get on with your day. So I'm going to double click noise HLS auto, making sure my grain adjustment layer is selected. And under the noise type, I'm going to go to grain. On the hue, 20%, lightness, 20%. And saturation 20%. And then on the grain size, I'm going to keep that at 1, and the noise animation speed, I'm just going to drop that to 20. And so you can see I'm going to zoom in here. We get a nice chunky grain within here, really adding some good variation within that color, the gradients. It's kind of got that dotted, almost pixelated look, but I just really love how this is playing with the light coming out of the middle there. So let me zoom back in, and I'm going to play through real quick, and you can see how this is working. So you can see we have those nice blooms coming out the center there. That grain is moving a lot within there. You can really see it in that light source. If I zoom out, you can see how this thing is really working. Yeah, I love this. So kind of to match this grainy look, I want to add a posterized time. And we're just going to drop some frames in here. Because, you know, with that grain, I think this movement is just a little too smooth. And this is just personal preference, but I'd love to drop a few frames within this just to kind of give it a more stuttered look. So I'm going to come down to my timeline, click on that PT adjustment layer. In my effects and presets, I'm going to type in posterize. It should bring up posterized time. Let's double click on that. And so it defaults at 24. I'm going to drop that to 11. And let's go ahead and play through this. And that is looking really good. I love how that noise is interacting with that light in the middle there. I love how the fanned off blades from the Sunburst are moving kind of slowly. That variation from the turbulent displace kind of dancing around within those beams. Beautiful. I love it. And it was just that simple. Just a few effects, a few layers, and making that initial bass loop gets us this effect. And so I want to show you how easy it is to come back over this base layer and just kind of tweak. You know, you could even tweak a couple things in here, like changing the points from 10 to 5. And if I come back here, you know, you get a whole different look, kind of more fanned out. Those beams are a little more flat and everything. That's a nice look too. Or you can come back over here, bump that up to 15. And then we get a lot more beams within that sunburst, which is nice as well. But for right now, we're going to keep this at 10. And then if you want, you can come back over to your project panel here, create one more new composition, same settings. Let's name this render. Hit OK. Come back to our project panel, grab our FX composition and drag it into our empty render comp. And now we have a nice clean render comp here. You know, you can bump this up maybe to 110 on the scale. Make sure those edges are nice and clean coming off the edge there. But again, just wanted to show you how easy it was to make this effect. And you can go over to your base layer, play with settings, you know, adjust different properties, or, you know, even work with some other shape layers in here, get a different looking loop than the Sunburst. But this effect is super nice with that look of the flares and the beams coming off. But I hope this is super useful. I hope this can help you with any projects or ideas you've had, maybe even taking some of these settings, not necessarily the Sunburst, but kind of the grain and the light and all that stuff into another project. And I'd love to see how you're using that. So go ahead over on Instagram, hit me up over there. I'd love to see your projects, your posts, share what you're working on, share a tutorial if you've made it. My favorite thing is seeing the tutorials that you guys have followed along and made and with me. So go over there at Timmy Dwyer, drop me a DM, hit me up in a comment, tag me in a post, whatever, and I'll say hi over there. You can also, below in the comments, say what's up, give me some feedback on tutorials, or if you have some questions or need some troubleshooting on any steps, I'd love to walk you through that. Or if you have any ideas for another tutorial, let me know that as well. I'm always down for new ideas, trying to figure out how people do things, maybe how we can achieve a look in a really good default way with After Effects and everything. So as always too, you can head over to my store, radloops.com. You can find different project files, some textures, some assets that can help you in your creativity, maybe in your work as well. I got some free stuff, some paid stuff. But yeah, go check it out. Take a scroll through, download some things that you like. But other than that, thank you guys so much for joining me. I'm excited about this one. I hope this helps, and I can't wait for the next one. But until the next tutorial, I hope you all have the best day.